You know how sometimes you stumble across a list like world's largest somethings and your brain just kind of glosses over it?
Uh-huh.
Well, today we're doing the opposite. We're taking that list specifically, the 10 largest islands on our planet, based on data from 10 most today, and we're diving deep.
Right.
We've got the number, the square kilometers, square miles, population figures, but our real mission here is to kind of unearth the fascinating stories and insights hidden within these, well, colossal land masses.
Absolutely. Because, size is one thing, it gives you a starting point. But what's truly captivating is the incredible diversity you find when you actually compare these giants.
Yeah.
We're talking like wildly different environments, population densities from almost empty to super crowded, and these complex relationships between the land, the people, and even political powers.
Yeah.
It's a great way to see the sheer variety of our world.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the big one, number one, Greenland. We're looking at a massive 2,130,800 square kilometers. That's 822,706 square miles. Just letting that number sink in. What strikes you about Greenland beyond just, well, how huge it is?
Well, think about this. For an island that big, the population is tiny, around 56,000 people. Just, remarkably small.
Wow.
And that sparse population has obviously shaped its unique indigenous cultures, and it creates real challenges for, like, infrastructure and managing resources over such a huge area. And the reason for that low density, it's tied to another key feature. Greenland holds the world's second largest ice sheet.
Right, the ice.
That massive ice basically dictates where people can live and fundamentally shapes the island's whole environment.
So a colossal, mostly frozen land with just these little communities kind of clinging to the edges. And then there's its political status. It's part of Denmark, right? A country that's like geographically tiny compared to this icy territory.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's such an interesting dynamic. It really shows how political connections aren't always about, land touching land.
Hmm.
Now, get ready for a complete shift. Let's jump to number two. New Guinea. At 785,753 square kilometers. It's quite a bit smaller than Greenland, but the population, it explodes to around 7.5 million people.
Whoa. That's an astounding difference. What's behind that kind of jump in population density compared to Greenland?
Well, several things. A lot of New Guinea has a more temperate climate, which means more farming, supporting bigger settlements. Plus, there's a much longer history of significant human habitation. But here's the really wild part. New Guinea makes up less than half of 1% of Earth's surface,
Okay.
but it's estimated to contain between 5% and 10% of all species on the planet.
No way. 5 to 10%.
Yeah, the biodiversity is just off the charts. That variety of life thrives there because of its diverse habitats and relative isolation, letting all these unique species evolve.
Which, of course, makes New Guinea super important for global conservation, especially with threats like deforestation and climate change. What happens there could really impact things worldwide.
Wow, okay, so Greenland, ice, few people. New Guinea, a biodiversity hotspot, teeming with life, and it's also split between the two countries, isn't it? Indonesia and Papua New Guinea.
Exactly. And that division naturally means different cultural vibes, different ways of managing things across the island, adds another layer of complexity.
Right.
Moving on to number 3, we have Borneo, land area, 748,168 square kilometers.
And this one's the largest island in Asia, which is a cool fact. And like New Guinea, it's also shared territory.
Yes, Borneo is split among 3 countries, Brunei, Indonesia, and Malaysia. It's a really compelling example of how one big piece of land can have multiple national borders drawn across it, each with its own laws, customs, economic stuff, all coexisting.
3 countries on one island. Huh. Okay, next up, number 4 is Madagascar. That's 587,713 square kilometers. For those of us picturing the map, where exactly is Madagascar again?
It sits off the eastern coast of southern Africa, just east of Mozambique. And because it's been isolated for so long, it has this incredibly high percentage of endemic species, plants, and animals found nowhere else.
Ah, like the lemurs.
Exactly. Though our source doesn't detail it, that isolation really shaped its unique natural heritage. It's another major biodiversity hotspot.
Got it. Then we hit number 5, Baffin Island, 507,451 square kilometers. Back to Canada. What's the story with Baffin?
Well, similar to Greenland, its huge size contrasts sharply with a very sparse population, only about 11,000 people.
11,000. Wow.
Yeah, again, likely reflects that challenging Arctic environment, limited accessibility across such a huge place. It's Canada's largest island, really emphasizes the scale of their northern territories.
Okay, number 6 takes us to Sumatra, 473,481 square kilometers. And we're back in Indonesia. This one seems different, though, population-wise.
Precisely. Sumatra is the largest island entirely within Indonesia, and it has a substantial population, almost 50 million people.
50 million.
Yep. And its largest city, Medan, has over 4 million folks in the greater urban area. So definitely a significant urban development, a thriving human presence.
So Indonesia's got 2 in the top 6, both with huge populations. Really shows the demographic weight of that archipelago nation. All right, moving on. Number 7, Honshu. 225,800 square kilometers. Many listeners will know this one, Japan's main island.
Absolutely. And it's
Yeah.
not just the largest and most populous island of Japan, it's actually the second most populous island in the world.
Second in the world. Who's first?
Indonesia's Java, which, interestingly, isn't even in this top 10 largest list, but it gives you amazing context for how densely populated an island can be.
That really puts things in perspective. Java, not even top 10 size, but number 1 for people.
Yeah.
Shows you land area alone doesn't dictate everything. Okay, number 8, Victoria Island, another Canadian one, 217,291 square kilometers.
And it's Canada's second largest island. The source gives a nice comparison here.
Yeah.
It's slightly larger than the island of Great Britain.
Ah, okay. That helps visualize it. Slightly bigger than Great Britain, which conveniently leads us straight to number 9, Great Britain itself. 209,331 square kilometers. Largest European island, biggest of the British Isles.
Right. And despite being smaller than Victoria Island, Great Britain packs in about 62 million people,
62 million.
making it the third most populous island worldwide. It really drives home that population density is super variable, not just about land size.
Absolutely. Okay, finally, rounding out the top 10, we have Ellesmere Island, another Canadian giant, 196,236 square kilometers, Canada's third largest. Canada really dominates the top end of this list, size-wise, even if the population is generally low up there.
Exactly. When you look at all 10, that range in population density is just, well, it's a huge takeaway. You've got the almost empty landscapes like Greenland and Baffin Island.
Right.
And then the really bustling populations of Honshu and Great Britain on the other end. Things like climate, resources, a history of settlement, economic opportunities. They all play a huge role in those differences.
And geographically, the distribution is pretty interesting, too. Multiple islands in Canada, showing off its vast Arctic territories. Indonesia features heavily, too, being a major archipelago nation. And Asia as a continent has quite a few.
What's also striking is how these islands, even if they seem isolated, are often politically linked to bigger continental powers, like Greenland and Denmark.
Yeah.
Or how one island can be this mosaic of different countries, like New Guinea and Borneo, each with its own culture and administration.
You mentioned New Guinea's biodiversity earlier, and that really stands out. Thinking that such a huge chunk of all life on Earth is concentrated on that one island in this top 10, it's kind of mind-blowing.
It really is. It underscores how vital specific places are for global ecological health.
Yeah.
And like we saw with New Guinea and Borneo, splitting these big islands among countries often creates this rich mix of cultures and different ways of governing, all on one piece of land.
So quite a whirlwind tour of the world's 10 biggest islands. And it's clear, they're all enormous, but they're incredibly diverse in almost every other way. Ice sheets to rainforests, tiny populations to huge cities, single nations to multinational territories.
Absolutely. It's just a powerful reminder of the incredible variety our planet holds.
And that brings us to our final thought for you, the listener. As you think about the immense size and these unique characteristics, Greenland's ice, New Guinea's biodiversity, Honshu and Great Britain's dense populations, what kind of global challenges and opportunities might they present in the future?
Yeah, things like managing resources, dealing with environmental concerns, maybe fostering more cultural exchange across these really significant land masses.
Exactly. Lots to think about. As always, there's a whole world of exploration waiting just beneath the surface.